The moment you felt that quiet shimmer in the air, the current of reality shifted. You didn't imagine it. You touched the edge of an ancient current once known only to those who studied the art of transmutation, the secret alchemists of the inner world. The portal they guarded is not built of metal or stone. It's a threshold woven of awareness itself. When you crossed it, the old self began to dissolve like lead surrendering to gold. Shapes of memory, thought, and time rearranged themselves around the new vibration pulsing through your field. Hermes once called this vibration the first matter, the seed from which all worlds are born. You have just awakened that seed within you. Now everything you perceive becomes the laboratory of your own evolution. The question is no longer what lies beyond the portal, it's who are you, now that you've stepped through it. You sense the first tremor as a pause between breaths, a gap so delicate you almost miss it. In that stillness, the noise of the world folds inward, and an older rhythm begins to hum through your bones. The hum feels familiar, like something you once knew before language existed, before you called anything mine. You realize that what you've opened is not a doorway in space, but a doorway in attention. The alchemy portal lives wherever awareness turns fully toward itself. The air around you thickens until each breath tastes of metal and rain. It smells of the forge and of a storm still forming beyond the horizon. You remember how the old alchemists spoke of the prima materia, the raw substance from which transformation begins. They said it hides in every moment, waiting for the touch of consciousness to reveal its glow. That is what you're feeling now. The shimmer of potential, the first spark of change. Your heartbeat becomes a drum, marking the edge between what you were and what you are becoming. With each beat, the walls of identity soften. Roles, names, even memories drift like flakes of ash. Behind them, something luminous expands, patient and vast. It does not replace what you are. It enfolds it, the way fire enfolds a log until both become light. When you close your eyes, color blooms inside the darkness, copper first, then green, then a gold so deep it seems to sing. The colors twist into threads and weave a pattern that feels older than thought. You remember that Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great scribe of the gods, called this pattern nous, the mind of the cosmos. To see it is to glimpse the same intelligence that stirs in stars, oceans, and seeds. You are not separate from it. You are the place it experiences itself as human. A warmth rises along your spine, not heat, but awareness. It feels like the memory of courage returning after a long sleep. You recognize it as the element of fire, the principle of will. Fire is what urges you to act, to create, to shape life rather than drift through it. Yet this fire asks for balance. It burns clean only when guided by clear intent. You breathe into it until the warmth steadies, and in that steadiness you sense power without aggression, motion without haste. Images arrive, unbidden craftsmen bent over stone tables, women mixing pigments under moonlight, the slow rhythm of hammers on anvils. They are memories of the human search for refinement, the ancient wish to turn raw matter into gold. You understand now that their furnaces were metaphors. The true metal was consciousness itself, and the gold was clarity. You feel gratitude for those nameless teachers across centuries who kept the language of change alive. You open your eyes. Light bends differently. Every surface seems to breathe. Even the shadow under your hand contains movement, tiny ripples of color. The portal has no frame, no hinge, no step. It is the simple recognition that perception can expand. What was background becomes living foreground. What was solid becomes process. You are standing inside a conversation between the seen and the unseen, and the conversation is endless. The scent of rain deepens. The second element, water, enters. It moves through you as emotion, washing across memories you hadn't realized were still tender. Grief for lost moments rises, followed by relief, then a quiet joy. You allow them to pass like tides. Water teaches you that nothing held too tightly can stay pure. only what flows remains alive. You whisper thanks to the element that dissolves without destroying. In the merging of fire and water, steam begins to form fine, translucent, whispering up through your awareness. The steam carries echoes of voice, the murmur of intuition. You remember that alchemists watched vapor to read the signs of balance. Too much heat and the mixture vanished. Too little and it stagnated. You feel the same principle within yourself. Transformation, you realize, is a dialogue between intensity and rest. A wind stirs around you. At first, it is only breath, but then it feels larger, as though the world itself has inhaled. Air wraps around your shoulders like cool silk. Thoughts sharpen, then widen, then fade into silence. Air is the principle of understanding, the ability to see from above, to witness without entanglement. You stand in that clarity and feel the outline of your life from a new height. The intersections of choice, the repeating patterns, the constellations of people and places that brought you here. With each breath, air and fire mingle, carrying a luminous awareness through your chest. The sense of separation softens even more. You begin to perceive the rhythm of life itself, pulsing through trees, stones, and the spaces between. It feels like music slowed to the pace of eternity. For a heartbeat, you realize that awakening is not escape but intimacy, the recognition that you have never been outside of anything. Earth arrives last, not as weight, but as certainty. Your feet feel the ground's quiet intelligence, the patience of minerals and roots. Earth tells you that transformation must take form to be complete. Every insight, every surge of light, asks to be planted in action. You understand that the alchemy portal opens not once but continuously. Each decision to act with awareness is another turning of the wheel. You stand still within the circle of elements, fire's courage, water's compassion, air's clarity, earth's steadiness, and feel them braid into a single current. The current hums with a message that seems to come from everywhere at once. You are the laboratory and the experiment, the question and the answer. The silence that began this journey returns, but it is no longer empty. It vibrates with presence, a living stillness. You realize the portal is not something you keep open by effort. It stays open by attention. When you forget, it closes. When you remember, it shines again. You smile because you know now that even forgetting is part of remembering. Something in you recognizes a deeper symmetry forming above and below, inner and outer, visible and invisible, beginning to mirror each other. You recall the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, so without. It no longer sounds like an abstract philosophy. You can feel it, a tangible reciprocity between your thoughts and the texture of the world. When peace settles in you, the air itself brightens. When you tense, even the horizon narrows. You realize you are co-authoring reality with every breath. The energy rising through your spine continues upward, touching the crown of your head with a cool shimmer. For a moment, it feels as though the top of your skull opens like a lotus blooming toward the sunday. You sense a column of light extending infinitely above and infinitely below your personal axis mundi, the same cosmic pillar that the Egyptians saw as the Jade of Osiris, symbol of stability between worlds. You remember that every temple was built upon this principle, the human body as bridge between earth and heaven. A subtle ringing enters your ears, not sound, but a vibration at the edge of hearing. The Tibetans call it the nada, the inner tone that heralds awakening consciousness. You listen and realize it's not coming from outside. It's your own awareness resonating with itself. The pitch shifts as your breathing steadies, creating a sense of correspondence between body, mind, and the unseen architecture around you. Then the colors within your vision begin to arrange themselves into geometry spirals, hexagons, overlapping circles that echo the flower of life pattern etched on the temple walls of Abydos. You realize you're seeing the mathematics of being, the scaffolding that holds reality together. It dawns on you that the ancients were not decorating stone for beauty's sake. They were recording the physics of consciousness. The geometry expands until it fills your perception completely. You stand at its center, a point of still awareness amid infinite symmetry. From this stillness rises a soft voice, not external, not internal, but both. The work has never been about turning lead into gold. It has always been about remembering that you are already gold. You breathe deeply, and something unclenches in your chest. The words feel less like information and more like homecoming. You recall the Vedic saying, "Tattvam asi, thou art that." The portal responds to recognition, glowing brighter as the sentence reverberates through every cell. The alchemy is happening not in a hidden laboratory, but in your living awareness, here and now. A deep calm settles. Your hands tingle. Your heart expands until it feels spherical, encompassing everything you can perceive. You realize that awakening isn't the end of the human story. It's the beginning of conscious participation in it. Every sensation becomes part of the sacred experiment. Every encounter becomes a reflection of the elements within you seeking harmony. The scene around you stabilizes again. Light, color, breath, all still luminous, but now integrated. The hum that began this experience remains, but it feels friendlier, like the steady vibration of a tuning fork rather than the shock of revelation. You understand that the mystical does not exist apart from the mundane. It hides inside it, waiting for someone to pay the right kind of attention. As the portal's glow softens, you realize that nothing has changed externally. The same room, the same air, the same body. Yet everything has shifted subtly toward coherence. The secret of the alchemists reveals itself in a single intuitive sentence that rises unbidden from within you. Transformation doesn't add anything, it reveals what was true all along. You breathe this insight into the core of your being. It feels like the first exhale after years of holding your breath. And in that release, the portal remains open, not as spectacle, but as state. You are inside it, and it inside you. A reciprocal awakening. When the radiance settles, the silence that follows feels almost startling. After the brightness, you half expect the world to dim, yet it doesn't. It simply grows softer, more human. The air is ordinary again, dust floating through a beam of afternoon light, the faint hum of something electric in the walls, but your perception has changed. You can feel the dust and the light negotiating with each other, tiny companions inside the same breath. This is what the return feels like. A remembering that even the smallest things participate in the infinite. Your body asks for movement. The simple act of stretching becomes ceremonial. Joints click, muscles lengthen. The pulse in your wrists beats in quiet applause. For a moment you sense the portal's glow pulsing inside the sinew. A reminder that enlightenment doesn't live somewhere above the body, it ripens through it. You stand, unhurried, letting gravity become your first teacher again. The soles of your feet relearn the weight of belonging to earth. Emotion returns like weather. Not the thunder of revelation, but the small, tender rains of ordinary feeling. You notice a nostalgia rising, perhaps for the intensity you just left behind. It's tempting to chase the lightning again, but another voice, softer, wiser, whispers that awakening is not measured by how long the sky stays lit. It's measured by how gently you can walk when the sky is gray. You breathe into that thought and find yourself smiling without reason. Memories begin to surface, conversations you wish had gone differently, faces of people you once loved, moments when you turned away from your own truth. They appear like ghosts, asking not for judgment but for recognition. You let them stand in the light of your new awareness. One by one they soften, as if the simple act of being seen is enough to dissolve their edges. Forgiveness, you realize, is not a single act. It's an atmosphere you learn to breathe. The portal within you responds. Its shimmer moves downward, into your chest. You feel the heart open not as a grand explosion, but as a slow unfurling, like the petals of a flower testing sunlight. Each pulse carries warmth outward. You recall how the mystics spoke of the heart as the true crucible of alchemy, where raw feeling becomes compassion, and compassion becomes wisdom. You feel the chemistry working, sorrow mingling with gratitude, fear dissolving into understanding, longing becoming tenderness for all that is. You step outside. The air greets you as if it remembers who you are. Colors seem steadier now, less intense yet more complete. The sky isn't a dome above you anymore. It's a living field that includes you. A bird passes overhead, its wings catching sunlight, and you sense the same current that moved through you and the portal flowing through that motion too. The world has not changed form, it has changed relationship. It's no longer something you look at, it's something you belong to. As you walk, every sound becomes a small initiation. The crunch of gravel beneath your shoes, the whisper of wind through leaves, the rhythm of your breathing, all of it joins the same quiet symphony. You begin to understand that integration is not about holding on to transcendence, but about learning to hear that symphony everywhere, even in chaos. The ancient work continues. In each moment you remember to listen. There is a point in the walk where you pause, overcome by a wave of tiredness. Transformation, after all, is a demanding guest. You sit on the ground and let fatigue speak. It tells you that growth doesn't mean constant expansion. Sometimes it means rest, digestion, silence. The earth beneath you feels warm, steady. You lean back on your hands and sense your heartbeat sinking with the slow pulse of the soil. It feels like the planet itself breathing you. Your thoughts wander to the people around you, their joys, their struggles. You realize that everyone you meet is mid-transmutation, carrying their own mixture of raw lead and hidden gold. The insight softens you. You no longer need to compare journeys or measure progress. Every path is part of the same chemistry of becoming. Compassion begins to replace opinion, curiosity begins to replace defense. This, you sense, is how the inner alchemist keeps the fire steady. By tending not to purity, but to kindness. The day edges toward evening. Shadows lengthen, colors cool. You watch the first star appear and remember the moment when the portal first opened, how vast it felt, how you almost disappeared into it. Now, instead of vanishing, you expand gently into presence. The star doesn't demand worship, it invites companionship. You sit beneath it, both luminous in your own ways, and you feel a quiet equality between heaven and earth. A memory surfaces of someone once telling you that awakening means leaving the world behind. You laugh softly. It seems so small a definition now. Leaving was never the point, seeing was. You can love the ordinary precisely because you understand its sacred geometry. The cup in your hands, the laughter down the street, the ache in your shoulders, all of it participates in the same pattern. The gold you sought has always been hidden in the clay of daily living. As night settles, you return indoors. The room greets you like an old friend. Objects you've ignored for years, books, a chair, a photograph, seem to shimmer with quiet recognition. You run your hand along the edge of the table and feel gratitude rise unprompted. Gratitude, you realize, is the philosopher's stone of emotion. It turns the ordinary into treasure simply by acknowledging it. You let that awareness fill the space. The room brightens without a single new light being lit. You prepare for sleep. The rituals are simple. Washing your face, folding fabric, switching off the lamp. Yet each gesture feels precise, deliberate, sacred. You understand that consciousness does not retreat when you rest. It deepens. Lying down, you sense the body exhale in relief. The portal hums softly at the base of your spine, reminding you that awakening is not a state to maintain, but a friendship to keep renewing. As your eyes close, images return, not of cosmic geometry this time, but of faces, landscapes, small kindnesses. You see the web of connection that carried you here, and you silently thank it. In the borderland between waking and dream, you hear the faint echo of the message that began this journey. You are the laboratory and the experiment, the question and the answer. The words no longer feel mysterious. They feel inevitable. You smile into the darkness. The alchemy continues quietly as sleep gathers you in its arms. Morning arrives softly. The first light slides across the floor, finding you before you fully wake. For a moment you don't remember where you are. There's only brightness and the sound of your own breathing. Then memory returns, not as a thought, but as a feeling of coherence. You stretch, and the body feels different, steadier, more deliberate, as though every muscle remembers the night's quiet alchemy. The simplest tasks become small rites. You pour water into a glass and watch it catch the sun, a column of moving light. You drink slowly. The taste of mineral and air grounds you. You sense how every action, no matter how ordinary, can be an act of alignment. This is what returning means. Not stepping away from the mystical, but allowing it to live inside the practical. As you move through the day, awareness follows you like a patient shadow. The rhythm of footsteps on pavement, the smell of bread from a nearby shop, the sudden laughter of a stranger all appear sharper, yet somehow gentler. You no longer need every moment to prove something miraculous. Simply noticing is enough. In the noticing, you feel that golden thread again, the one that ran through the portal. It hums quietly through errands and conversations, weaving light into the texture of the day. A friend greets you. You look into their eyes and see more than expression. You see depth, fatigue, hope. You realize that everyone carries an invisible laboratory within them, each soul experimenting with its own form of gold. You listen differently now. Words are less important than the silence beneath them. Compassion becomes your new instinct, the reflex of an open heart. There are still moments when impatience rises, when the old patterns reach for control. You catch them in the act, these small storms of thought, and meet them with the calm curiosity of a chemist observing a reaction. You've learned that nothing needs to be resisted into submission. It only needs to be understood. Even the darker moods have their element, their lesson. Lead becomes gold through heat, and awareness is that heat. At work, you feel time differently. The tasks haven't changed, but the pace within you has. You notice how intention alters texture. An email written with care feels cleaner than one written in hurry. A breath taken before speaking turns conflict into clarity. You start to sense that transformation is not something you do, it's the way you are while doing. Later, as evening leans toward dusk, you take a walk. The city glows with the amber of streetlights, and each light seems to echo the one you carry inside. Children's voices spill from a playground. A dog barks. Somewhere a window opens and music drifts out. You stand in the middle of it all and feel the world breathing around you. For the first time, you understand what the sages meant by unity. Not sameness, but harmony. 1,000 different notes sounding one invisible chord. You think of the ancient symbol, the Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its own tail. It used to puzzle you, creation devouring itself. Now it feels simple. The journey out and the journey back are one motion. Every ending feeds a beginning. The portal you entered wasn't an escape from life. It was the turning point within it. To live consciously is to let the circle complete itself, again and again. As you walk home, you pass a shop window filled with reflections, your image overlapping with lights, passing cars, fragments of sky. For a heartbeat, you see yourself as part of everything moving. No boundary between observer and observed. Then a breeze touches your face, and the reflection shifts. You laugh quietly. The moment passes, but its imprint remains a reminder that you can slip into vastness at any time simply by paying attention. At home, you write, not to record, but to anchor. Words pour out like slow metal from a crucible. Thoughts about kindness, about courage, about the subtle art of remaining open in a noisy world. You realize the gold you found is not a treasure to keep, but a language to share. Every sentence becomes a bridge for someone else to cross. Sometimes, in the middle of writing, the portal stirs again. A shiver of awareness runs through you, a small flash of the geometry you saw before. You pause and breathe. The glow rises, then fades, leaving a trace of serenity. You understand that illumination no longer needs to be dramatic. The divine prefers to speak in whispers once you've learned to listen. The days pass. Routine reshapes itself around this new stillness. You make mistakes. You forget. You remember. Each cycle refines you a little more, like metal polished by constant use. What once felt like the end of a journey now feels like the beginning of practice, the gentle discipline of showing up to each moment with honesty. One evening, after a long day, you sit beside the window. The sky bleeds from gold to violet. The first stars appear, and with them a question. What now? The answer rises from somewhere deeper than thought. Live as proof that light can take human form. It sounds simple, almost ordinary, but it lands in you like truth. You close your eyes and imagine sending quiet ripples of that truth outward to friends, to strangers, to the ones who struggle as you once did. You picture those ripples touching their own hidden portals, awakening small recognitions. The thought humbles you. The work continues through every heart willing to remember. The night deepens. Lamps flicker on in nearby windows. The city hum subsides. You lean back, feeling the quiet settle inside you. The portal is no longer a vision to enter or a mystery to solve. It has become a rhythm, the pulse of your own presence. Whenever you breathe with awareness, it opens. Whenever you forget, it waits. The alchemy has woven itself into the simple act of being alive. And as you rest in that understanding, a gentle invitation forms wordless at first, then clear. Carry this gold into the world. Let your kindness be the evidence. Let your choices shine quietly. Let every breath remind you that you are still inside the portal, still part of the transformation. You open your eyes. The room is dim, yet full of life. Everything glows with the faint sheen of having been truly seen. You exhale, steady and sure. The work is not finished. It never will be. It simply changes shape as you do. Outside, the night wind moves through the trees, sounding almost like a voice, and you understand it now. It isn't calling you away, it's welcoming you home. You wake before the first light, not because an alarm tells you to, but because something inside you is listening for the quiet pulse that the world hides before it wakes. The air feels different now, wider somehow, as though every breath contains both an echo and an answer. You stand still, feeling the soft gravity of the body, the weight that used to seem like limitation now remembered as permission to exist. The pulse in your chest keeps time with the slow turning of the earth. You realize this rhythm was never lost. You had only forgotten how to hear it. When you step outside, the morning is a thin veil of silver. The street looks the same, but every surface carries a subtle shimmer, like breath on glass. You sense it isn't the world that has changed, but your vision expanded, porous, alive. Every sound, the scrape of a wheel, a bird's uncertain note, the hush of leaves seems to arrive directly through the center of your heart. You walk, and each step feels like dialogue. Concrete, air, heartbeat, all parts of the same conversation. People you pass are wrapped in their own orbits. A man checks his phone, his face lit blue. A woman hurries with her scarf trailing wind. Once you might have moved among them like another hurried shadow, but now you feel a soft compassion for the invisible storms each one carries. You no longer need to fix or rescue them. The recognition itself feels like prayer. You breathe in their motion, their noise, their silence, and let it all pass through you like water through light. As the day begins, you find yourself inside the familiar routines, making coffee, answering messages, but something subtle keeps rearranging how these actions feel. Every motion contains texture and temperature, the sound of contact, the aroma curling from the cup, the warmth against your palms, the steam becoming a small cloud before your face, all ordinary, all holy. You're beginning to understand that the divine doesn't live in rare events. It hides in repetition, waiting for presence to notice. The mind still hums, still tries to hurry. It whispers old urgencies, the unfinished list, the future's uncertain teeth. You smile at it now. The voice hasn't vanished, but it has lost its authority. Instead of pushing it away, you let it speak and dissolve. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's filled with the hum of being alive. You realize you can meet the noise of the world without being consumed by it. The breath becomes your anchor, your bridge. Every inhale gathers the world. Every exhale gives yourself back. By afternoon, life begins to press closer again, the traffic's fevered pulse, the avalanche of notifications, the quiet ache of responsibility. You feel the familiar tug to tighten, to shrink. But the body remembers what openness feels like, and you let a slow breath expand the ribs, softening the edges. The chaos outside finds its mirror in the microcosm of your heartbeat, and for a moment, both are synchronized. This is the first real test of awakening. Not in silence, but in the noise. To remain porous, breathing the world without losing yourself. You sit at your desk, watching sunlight fracture across the screen. Every pixel, every shadow seems to participate in some secret choreography. You begin to type, not to produce, but to listen, words appearing like ripples forming around a stone you didn't throw. Creation feels less like effort and more like remembering. You see now that inspiration was never something you chased. It was the natural consequence of being present enough to receive. Later, as you walk home, the city feels like a single organism breathing through millions of lungs. The scent of food, the laughter of strangers, the pulse of music spilling from a doorway, all of it folds together into one continuous exhale. You catch yourself smiling for no reason. For the first time, happiness doesn't feel like a peak to climb, but a rhythm to join. You think of how often you searched for meaning in distant places when the truth was always humming under your skin. As dusk arrives, a hush settles over the streets. Lights bloom one by one, tiny suns keeping vigil. You pause at a crosswalk, feeling the hum of engines and the whisper of wind. In the reflection of a window, you catch your own eyes. Something in that gaze looks ancient, patient, and impossibly kind. You realize you're looking through the eyes of the world itself, seeing itself through you. The circle has quietly closed, and you are standing in its center. You walk on, carrying that knowing like a flame cupped in your hands. It doesn't burn, it illuminates. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat feels like both a question and its answer. The world breathes you, and you breathe the world. For now, that is enough. You start to notice it first in small ways, the way people linger a second longer when you speak, the way strangers meet your eyes before looking away, half startled, half softened. It isn't that you're doing anything new, it's that you're finally present enough for them to feel it. The world seems to sense the change before you do. It responds like a body, recognizing one of its cells has begun to glow. In conversation, you hear more than words. Beneath every sentence, there's a pulse, a rhythm of longing, a need to be seen. You realize how rarely people feel truly witnessed. You listen not as strategy, but as offering, and something in them relaxes. Faces shift, voices slow. You can almost see the tension melt from their shoulders, as if your calm gives them permission to breathe. You begin to understand that awareness itself is an act of love. You don't need perfect phrases or clever advice. Your presence is the medicine. With close friends, the dynamic changes too. Some draw nearer, magnetized by the peace you radiate. Others drift away quietly, as if the vibration of your life no longer matches theirs. There's no blame in it, only a soft sadness that feels both ancient and necessary. You've learned that growth is not an ascent, but an unfolding. Each petal opens in its own time. You bless them in their season, even if that season no longer includes you. In creative work, something wild begins to happen. The ideas that used to feel distant, trapped behind effort, now rise on their own, like mist over water. You start drawing, or writing, or playing music without planning what comes next. The lines, the notes, the words seem to move through you rather than from you. At first, it's intoxicating, the rush of being a conduit instead of a controller. But soon you realize it's subtler than that. This flow isn't about channeling something foreign. It's about letting yourself become transparent enough for life to express itself through you, unfiltered. You find that the more honest your expression becomes, the more it mirrors others back to themselves. A story you tell opens a memory in someone else. A painting you make pulls tears from another's eyes. They say, "You put into words what I couldn't say," and you smile because you know you didn't really put it there. You just stopped resisting what wanted to speak through you. That's the secret, isn't it? When you stop trying to shine, Light moves freely. Sometimes this new openness feels raw. You catch emotional currents that aren't yours: grief, joy, fear, all drifting through the shared field of being human. It can be overwhelming. So you learn boundaries made of love instead of walls. You let the energy pass through like weather, touching but not uprooting. You begin to understand that empathy isn't about carrying another's pain. It's about standing beside them until they remember they can carry it themselves. There are moments when old shadows return, testing your balance. Maybe it's a conflict, a misunderstanding, a wound reopened by an offhand word. For a heartbeat, you forget everything. You tighten, defend, close. But then, a deeper muscle of awareness flexes. You pause, breathe, and notice the mirror. This person across from you, their eyes flashing with the same fear you used to drown in. You feel compassion rise like a tide. The portal opens again, not in light or vision, but in patience. You see both of you clearly, two mirrors reflecting the same ache, the same desire to be safe. Something softens. The argument dissolves before words can finish. It's not surrender, it's alchemy. Days fold into weeks. Life continues, but the texture of time has changed. You find yourself drawn to quiet acts of kindness, a compliment given without reason, a door held a heartbeat longer, a silent prayer whispered for a stranger. These gestures feel effortless, almost instinctive. They don't come from obligation, but from overflow. You are no longer trying to do good. You've become a shape through which goodness moves. One night, you're with friends around a fire. Laughter spills, shadows dance, and for a moment, everything slows. You watch their faces in the glow, their stories, their scars, the sparks in their eyes. You feel an almost unbearable tenderness. You realize love isn't a feeling aimed at someone. It's a state that sees everything as itself. You look at each of them and silently thank them for being your mirrors, for showing you the many faces of your own heart. Later, when everyone's gone, you sit beside the fading embers. The silence feels alive, pulsing between each crack of ash. You think of the faces you've seen today, the countless mirrors that reflected you back to yourself. Some were kind, some cruel, all truthful. You whisper a small promise to the fire, to keep seeing, to keep reflecting light even in the dark. And in that moment, you understand something that feels both simple and infinite, that the alchemy was never meant to end inside you. It's a contagion of consciousness. Each time you meet another with open eyes, the gold transfers invisibly, atom by atom, through the space between hearts. You can't force it, you can't control it. You can only keep your own flame clear, so that when someone stumbles through their night, they might glimpse its glow and remember their own. The fire sighs. A single spark leaps upward, disappearing into the night. You smile. The mirror has become the world itself, and you are both sides of its reflection. You don't notice at first when purpose starts moving through you. It doesn't arrive as a grand revelation or a thunderclap of destiny. It begins as a tug beneath the ribs, a subtle current that keeps guiding your attention towards certain people, certain places, certain needs. It whispers rather than declares. You simply begin to find yourself in the right place at the right time, saying the right words without knowing how you knew them. You used to believe purpose was a goal, a single shining line stretching from beginning to end. Now it feels more like breath arriving, departing, arriving again. Each exhale gives something back to the world. Each inhale draws the world back into you. You start to understand that service isn't about sacrifice, it's about circulation. Life gives, you give, and the loop stays alive. A friend calls you one morning, their voice tight with worry. The old you would have rushed to fix the problem, to deliver comfort like an answer sheet. But now you listen. You let the silence between their words hold them. You speak less, but each word feels deliberate, rooted. When they finally sigh, you realize healing often happens in the pauses, not in the solutions. When the call ends, you sit for a while, breathing gratitude for the unseen exchange that just took place. Two hearts remembered themselves in conversation. At work, your rhythm has changed. You used to measure days in tasks completed. Now you measure them in moments of clarity. You notice how intention alters the shape of results. An email written with presence carries a gentler tone. A meeting begun with a breath unfolds without friction. Colleagues start coming to you not for advice, exactly, but to stand in whatever stillness you seem to bring with you. You don't explain what you're doing, because there's nothing to explain. You simply keep remembering, again and again, that attention is the real currency of transformation. One afternoon, you find yourself walking through the park. Children run past in streaks of laughter. A dog chases a leaf. Sunlight filters through the trees in a language you don't need to translate. You sit on a bench and watch the world unfold. Every movement feels precise, ordained by some quiet intelligence. You realize that what you once called the divine isn't distant. It's this orchestration of small perfections happening in plain sight. You are both spectator and participant, breathing in rhythm with it all. Then a small thing happens. A stranger drops a bag of groceries, oranges rolling across the path. Without thought, you rise, gather them, smile. The gesture takes seconds, yet something deep within you vibrates with recognition. This is the work, not the mystical visions or the meditations that stretch into light, but these moments when love becomes motion. You help, you return, you walk away, and the world feels subtly brighter, as if acknowledging the exchange. Evenings become rituals of reflection. You sit with a notebook, not to catalog achievements, but to trace the day's quiet miracles. You notice how easily the sacred hides inside the ordinary. The warmth of a cup, the weight of a cat settling on your lap, the pulse of music through thin apartment walls. You write not to remember, but to celebrate. Gratitude has stopped being an exercise. It has become your native language. Still, there are days when the current slows, when fatigue or doubt creeps back in. On those days, you let the world remind you. A tree outside your window sways patiently, its leaves catching wind and sun in the same motion. You watch it and remember balance, how receiving and giving are one gesture performed in two directions. You close your eyes and let your breath sync with the tree's rhythm. When you open them again, perspective has returned. Purpose doesn't disappear. It waits quietly behind the noise until you notice it again. You start teaching, not formally, but through presence. A neighbor confides their restlessness. A colleague asks about peace, and you share small things you've learned. How to pause before reacting. How to find silence beneath thought. How to let compassion replace control. You never call it wisdom, you call it remembering. And in teaching, you learn again. The circle of giving and receiving keeps widening, like ripples from a single dropped stone. One night, a storm sweeps through the city. Rain lashes windows, thunder folds the sky, and the power flickers out. In the darkness, you light a single candle. The flame trembles but holds. You watch it dance and realize this is the essence of what you've become, a small light that doesn't fight the dark, but reveals it as spacious, alive. The candle doesn't conquer the night, it collaborates with it, making the shadows visible. You smile, feeling the lesson land in your chest. Purpose is not about erasing darkness, but about illuminating what it hides. When morning comes, the streets glisten. Puddles mirror clouds. People hurry past, heads down, and yet everything seems washed new. You breathe in the scent of rain-soaked earth, and it feels like the planet exhaling relief. You understand now that the world itself practices alchemy every day, transforming storm into clarity, decay into nourishment, ending into beginning. You are part of that cycle, not above it. Later, while walking home, you pause by a storefront window. Your reflection blends with those passing behind you, a child's laughter, an old man's careful step, a woman carrying flowers. For a heartbeat, you see all of you together, one pulse of motion in the same frame. That, you realize, is the true gold returned, the knowledge that individuality was never isolation. You belong to everything you touch, and everything you touch belongs to you. The day settles into evening. You sit by the window again, The same seat where you first felt the portal open. The sky shifts from coral to indigo. You close your eyes and sense it, the steady hum beneath existence, the living thread that ties every breath to every star. The portal was never behind you. It moves with you now, subtle as heartbeat, vast as sky. A quiet smile forms. You feel ready not for some grand mission, but for the next simple act of presence. To listen, to create, to comfort, to live as the translation of light into human form. You whisper to the fading light, "Let me remember." And the world, breathing through the open window, seems to answer, "Always." You may begin to notice it first as a soft pulse beneath your ordinary perceptions, the subtle shimmer that hides behind daily routines, the quiet hum that seems to breathe through everything. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or visions, but with the still certainty that something vast is quietly watching through your own eyes. When you wake before dawn and the air holds its first silver light, you might feel it then. The gentle intelligence that moves through the veins of the world and the center of your chest at once. This is the real alchemy, not the transmutation of metals, but the refinement of perception. The slow conversion of attention into gold. As your awareness deepens, what once appeared solid begins to soften, to reveal its living interior. The coffee steaming on your table, the rhythm of passing footsteps, even the breath that rises and falls without your command, everything becomes a living scripture written in motion. You start to sense that you are not inside the world, so much as the world is inside you. Each sound enters consciousness and dissolves there. Each sight arises and fades within the same boundless awareness. The sages of Egypt spoke of this as the eye of Ra turned inward, the sun that illuminates both heaven and the secret chambers of the heart. In Taoist texts, it's called the returning light. In early Christian mysticism, the still small voice. But names don't matter. What matters is that you begin to feel life looking back at you. When that recognition first opens, it can be almost too tender to bear. You might cry for no reason, as though every cell is remembering something ancient and beautiful that it had forgotten. Colors feel closer, sounds more intimate. Even silence gains texture. You realize that awareness isn't something you do, it's what you are before doing arises. The mystics called this state gnosis, direct knowing, not a belief or idea, but the undeniable experience of being the consciousness through which existence expresses itself. At first, the mind tries to claim this discovery. It says, "I understand now," and builds new philosophies around the light. But the light doesn't belong to the mind. It's too fluid, too encompassing. The moment you think you possess it, it withdraws, teaching humility. True mastery begins when you stop trying to hold it and instead let yourself be held by it. You walk through your day not as someone enlightened, but as someone who cannot stop listening. The ancient alchemists knew this stage as the whitening, when the dense matter of self is purified by the fire of awareness. In practical life, it feels like small acts of clarity appearing where confusion once ruled. You respond instead of react. You notice the impulse to defend, to prove, to control, and you smile, feeling how those movements ripple through the nervous system and dissolve when met with simple noticing. It's not that emotions vanish. They become translucent, each one carrying a message instead of a threat. Slowly, awareness begins to seep into motion itself. The way you stir soup, the way your feet strike the ground, the pauses between words all begin to carry a faint radiance. You're not trying to be spiritual, you're simply present, and presence itself is luminous. The Sufi poet said, "When the soul is awake, even dust dances like gold in the Sunday." This is what they meant. Nothing has changed, yet everything has. You might find yourself drawn to ordinary things with reverence. The lines on your hand, the creak of an old door, the smell of rain on pavement. These aren't sentimental attachments. They're reflections of the same life force shimmering through every form. Awareness turns the mundane into a temple. You realize that the sacred isn't somewhere else, it's the texture of what's already here when nothing is rejected. The deeper the stillness grows, the more paradoxical it becomes. You can be fully engaged in conversation, laughing, cooking, driving through traffic, and underneath, there's an unbroken calm, like a lake undisturbed by its own ripples. This is the quiet mastery of awareness, lived in ordinary life. The light doesn't erase the world, it includes it. You can feel sadness without drowning, joy without grasping, uncertainty without retreating into fear. You become porous, transparent enough for life to move through without resistance. Many traditions describe this shift as moving from doing to being, but you discover that even being isn't static. It's a living current. It breathes you, speaks through you, and meets itself in every encounter. In those moments, the boundary between you and the other person, object, sound dissolves. What remains is participation, communion. You speak, and the universe answers through wind, through coincidence, through the glint of light on a window pane. Sometimes, this openness can feel too vast. The mind might panic, grasping for old definitions. Who am I if I'm not my thoughts, my history, my striving? It's natural. Every birth requires a small death. Let the identity that was built to survive surrender to the awareness that simply is. The Buddhists call this shunyata, the emptiness that is not nothing but infinite potential. It's the same silence that spoke through the hieroglyphs of Thoth, the same creative void from which every form arises. Gradually, you learn to trust this openness. You stop chasing experiences of light and instead live as light expressing itself through experience. You make breakfast, answer emails, feel frustration, comfort a friend, and all of it becomes the dance of consciousness learning to recognize itself. You realize that awakening doesn't make you special. It makes you simple. The miracle is in the ordinariness, the act of seeing clearly, loving fully, responding truthfully. And when you inevitably forget, when you get lost again in hurry or doubt, awareness is still there, waiting patiently behind the noise. The return home happens in an instant, one breath, one honest pause, and the veil thins again. This is the rhythm of embodied awakening. Expansion, contraction, remembering, forgetting, and remembering again. Each cycle polishes the mirror of perception until the light shines through effortlessly. The shift from awakening to embodiment doesn't happen with a single revelation. It unfolds like breath expanding, contracting, weaving light into the fibers of ordinary existence. You might notice it first in how you respond to the small frictions of daily life. The traffic jam, the unreturned message. The old emotional trigger moments that once felt charged with irritation now appear as invitations, subtle openings through which awareness tests its depth. You begin to feel the alchemy of transformation happening not in temples or sacred sites, but right in the grocery line, in the office, in the hum of routine. The philosopher Hermes Trismegistus, whom Thoth was said to embody, spoke of the great work as fixing the volatile and volatilizing the fixed. This wasn't chemistry. It was a precise description of what happens when consciousness begins to stabilize in form. The volatile fleeting insights, mystical highs, spontaneous love must be fixed into the body, into behavior, into the rhythms of life. And the fixed old habits, rigid identities, hardened beliefs must be made fluid by the heat of awareness until they can flow again. You are living that experiment now, transforming lead into gold, not by escaping your humanity, but by inhabiting it completely. You start to realize that awakening isn't about leaving the world behind. It's about seeing that the world itself is divine matter, the body of consciousness in motion. The same intelligence that moves galaxies also moves through your gestures, your words, your heartbeat. When you walk into a room, the light doesn't just fall on you, it responds to you. The environment, the people you meet, the timing of events all begin to subtly mirror your inner state. This is not superstition, but resonance. You feel how every thought, every emotion carries a frequency that ripples outward, shaping the field around you. There comes a moment, perhaps, while washing dishes, perhaps while watching the dusk settle into the edges of a city skyline, when you understand that enlightenment was never about transcendence, it's about intimacy. The light doesn't descend upon you from above. It awakens through you, through your hands, your laughter, your vulnerability. You become transparent enough for grace to move without distortion. And this is where the work deepens. Because once awareness begins to stabilize, everything unresolved in you will rise to meet it. Old wounds, unacknowledged desires, ancestral echoes all come to the surface, not to punish, but to be integrated. The alchemists called this the reddening, the stage when purified awareness fuses with the blood of lived experience. It's messy, tender, utterly human. You might find yourself crying in the middle of a meeting, laughing for no reason, or feeling immense compassion for someone you once resented. The energy moving through you is both purification and union. It's as if the universe is saying, now that you remember what you are, can you also love what you've been? Each emotion becomes a teacher. Anger, once feared, reveals its core of vitality. Grief uncovers depth. Fear exposes hidden devotion to life. When you meet these states without rejection, they dissolve into their luminous essence. You understand why the mystics said the heart is the true philosopher's stone, because only through the heart can you transmute pain into wisdom. The heart doesn't analyze, it includes. It takes the fragments of your humanity and turns them into a single radiant wholeness. You'll find that this process changes your relationships in unexpected ways. Some connections fall away naturally, as if old frequencies can no longer harmonize with your new vibration. Others deepen, expanding into an authenticity that once felt impossible. You start speaking more slowly, listening more fully. You notice when others are still caught in loops of unconsciousness, but you don't judge. You remember when you were there too. The impulse to fix people softens into the desire to see them clearly, not as broken, but as beings in process. Just like you, this quiet seeing becomes your real gift. You might discover that people begin opening to you effortlessly, telling you things they've never told anyone. It's not because you've said something profound. It's because your presence is safe, unmasked. The light you've cultivated radiates through the silence between words. Animals sense it. Children notice it instantly. Even strangers might pause around you, unsure why they feel calm. This is the invisible transmission of awakening, not a performance, but the simple fact of coherence. When consciousness becomes coherent in one being, it invites coherence in others. And yet, embodiment doesn't mean perfection. There will be days when you forget, when the mind pulls you back into smallness and noise. Those moments aren't failures, they are part of the rhythm, the inhale and exhale of awakening. Every time you return, the awareness roots deeper. You start seeing that even forgetting is a form of grace, a necessary contraction before the next expansion. The path becomes less about progress and more about participation. You're no longer climbing toward light, you're learning to live as its expression. Ancient mystics spoke of the marriage of heaven and earth, the union of spirit and matter, awareness and embodiment. When this marriage begins to stabilize within you, life reorganizes around it. Your work, your art, your relationships all start reflecting a deeper intelligence. Creative ideas flow effortlessly. Synchronicities multiply. You might feel guided, but not by something external, by the quiet precision of intuition, the pulse of the same intelligence that moves tides and planets. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, not through planning, but through alignment. This alignment is subtle but unmistakable. When you act from it, things unfold with grace. When you resist it, friction returns. It's as if the universe has become an intimate dance partner, responding instantly to your state of being. You no longer need to force outcomes. The doing flows from being, and being flows from love. Over time, the luminous state ceases to feel extraordinary. It becomes natural, self-evident, like breathing. The radiance you once glimpsed in meditation now fills ordinary gestures, the way you tie your shoes, hold a cup, greet a stranger. You begin to understand what the Zen masters meant when they said, Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The difference is that now, every action is infused with awareness. The sacred and the mundane merge completely. Sometimes you'll sense an even deeper stillness, opening beneath everything, an oceanic presence that holds the world together from within. When you rest there, even briefly, the boundaries between inner and outer dissolve. You realize that this awareness, vast, luminous, unconditioned, is the same essence that has been living through you all along. It was never lost, never absent. Every step, every mistake, every longing was simply the path it chose to remember itself. You start to live from that knowing quietly, not as a teacher, not as someone enlightened, but as a participant in the unfolding miracle of existence. You might find yourself offering kindness spontaneously, not because it's right, but because separation no longer makes sense. Compassion becomes instinctive. Gratitude arises without cause. Each breath feels like prayer, each gaze a blessing. And in time, even the language of awakening fades. You stop talking about light and consciousness because you're too busy living it, tending to your garden, raising your children, creating art, helping strangers, or simply sitting under the stars, feeling the vastness move through your chest. This is the quiet mastery Thoth whispered about, the final stage of the alchemy. Awareness grounded in flesh, eternity expressed through the ordinary. You have not become divine. You have remembered that you always were. The portal you opened was never separate from you. It was your own consciousness calling you home. And now, standing here eyes open, breath steady, feet on the living earth, you finally understand. The gold the alchemist sought was never hidden in matter. It was hidden in seeing. Take a breath. Feel the air enter your body, quiet, simple, sacred. Let it remind you that this moment, this ordinary inhale, is the same life that shapes stars and carries rivers to the sea. You don't need to search for light anymore. It's already here, moving through your lungs, resting behind your eyes. The alchemy you've witnessed isn't a story about someone else, it's your reflection, waiting for recognition. So as you leave this space, don't rush to hold on to what was said. Let it dissolve into silence, and let that silence guide you. When you wake tomorrow, before touching your phone or stepping into the noise of the world, pause for a single breath and remember, awareness is your first language. From that stillness, everything you do becomes part of the great work, walking, working, loving, creating all of it, refining the lead of the world into gold. If you feel called, begin today. Sit with your breath for 5 minutes. Watch one thought rise and fall without judgment. Feel your feet on the ground as you move through your day. Speak to others as if they are fragments of the same light, learning to know itself because they are. Let kindness be your practice, presence your philosophy, and love your alchemy. You've opened the portal. You've walked through the fire. Now, live as the gold. When the next sunset spills its light across the sky, remember that you are watching your own consciousness painted in color. Smile at the miracle of it. Whisper gratitude to the unseen intelligence that brought you here. Then, gently, offer this awareness back to the world through your touch, your art, your words, your silence. That is your invitation. That is your call. The work has already begun.